Rangers rookie camp is underway, and the Ranger rookies are set to play two highly anticipated games against the rookies from the Philadelphia Flyers. Today, we break it all down with Rachel Miriam and Russ Cohen from Locked On Flyers.
You're Locked On the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1137 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So yeah, today we're going to get the spotlight pointed directly at the Ranger rookie camp, and more specifically, the upcoming two-game set between the Ranger rookies and the Flyer rookies that will be happening in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Definitely looking forward to that. Always a nice little tradition that it's become the last couple of years here between the Rangers and Flyers during the offseason. And to get some perspective from the Flyer side of things, we're going to be doing a very special crossover edition with Rachel and Russ from Locked On Philadelphia Flyers. Enjoy.
This seems to be turning into an annual event with the New York Rangers and Philadelphia Flyers having the rookie series. We weren't sure it was happening until kind of last minute.
Yeah, it really was.
But for the Flyer side of things, happy to welcome John Chick from Locked On New York Rangers. And I am Rachel Donner from Locked On Flyers, along with my lovely and talented co-host, Russ Cohen here. And very excited to get some actual hockey games going with players in our team's jerseys, right, John?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, this has become kind of a fun annual event. I believe this is at least the fourth year that they're doing it. And, you know, it's kind of become a tradition between the Rangers and Flyers to do this every offseason. We're starting our own little tradition here, too. This is at least the second time that we've done a crossover in preparation for this this two-game battle between the Ranger rookies and the Flyer rookies. So, yeah, looking forward to the games and looking forward to breaking it down with each of you.
So, in terms of the Rangers overall, John, what was the feeling when the Rangers season ended, and what were the biggest off-season needs the team had?
Yeah, it was tough. I mean, obviously, you know, they made a solid run at it. They start the playoffs 7-0. They sweep the Caps, and things got a little bit dicey against the Canes, but they were able to finish them off. You get that awesome performance by Kreider in Game 6 where he gets the hat trick and leads them all the way back, and they move on. And, I mean, look, I think every Ranger fan everywhere pretty much knew that we were running into a buzzsaw in the Panthers. I mean, they are just such a well-rounded depth, you know, a ton of depth on that team and no real weaknesses either. And we knew it was going to be a tough one. Rangers got up 2-1, obviously. Probably a little fortunate to be up 2-1 rather than down 2-1. But all those games were tight, and the Rangers came up a little bit short. So, you know, it's funny because 2 years before that, when they got to the conference final, everybody was feeling great. After this one, probably not quite as much. But, you know, the good news is that most of the team is still intact, and, you know, they'll bring everybody back next year. There's no reason to think that they won't be once again among the NHL's elite. So I think Ranger fans are getting excited to see this team make another run at it. And as far as, you know, off-season moves, you know, I was hoping for, you know, kind of like a grittier top 6 right wing type player. Instead, they go out, they trade for Riley Smith, who I also like. I think he's got a good chance to open the season with Mika and with Kreider.
Did you like him more 3 years ago than now? Because I think that guy would have been the guy. Like now it's like,
Yeah, you know, they've it's funny you say that, Russ, because the Rangers have been kind of infatuated with Smith for some time. Even
a long time, yeah.
Yeah, even when he was with Vegas, they were looking into maybe trying to trade for him. Never materialized until recently. You know, fine pickup. I think he does make the Rangers a little bit better, but I would have liked a more like kind of a guy that comes in and does some of the dirty work. You know, guys like somebody like an Anthony Mantha, for example, was signed on a 1-year deal. He could have been had. But, you know, I'll ask both of you basically the same question. Obviously, these two teams are kind of in a little bit of a different situation, but Flyers were knocking on the door last year. They were within an eyelash of making it to the playoffs. What did they do this offseason, and how do you both feel going into next year? You know, can this be a playoff team?
You can go first, Rich.
Yeah, I think, there was a lot of disappointment that they didn't hold on to that playoff spot at the end. But I think that disappointment wore off pretty quickly because we all kind of recognized that the team did a hell of a lot better than was expected of them. And you look at so many preseason picks had the Flyers in last place in the division. And so to compete for a playoff spot was, I think, playing with house money to some degree. And so it was basically like, we just got to move forward now. And I think part of the thing about this offseason for the Flyers is that based on how the contract statuses weren't a lot of roster spots available. There's like one or two. So there really wasn't much that the Flyers could do this offseason. And so they generally made small moves. Now, that was obviously before the Michkov decision happened. But yeah, Russ, do you think that was the right take in terms of how quickly the disappointment wore off?
Yeah, I don't think that was going to be long lasting. I mean, personally, I didn't think they were going to make it. Even going into that last game, I just didn't believe. And so, yeah, they took it as far as they could take it. And I don't think the disappointment lasted long. I just think they had the wrong tact in the offseason. They got older. And I felt like they should have given the younger guys a chance. But, John Tortorella, who coached both teams, generally doesn't want to teach young guys for the most part. He'll do a little of it. He won't do a lot of it. So he has put a lot of veterans on this roster on purpose. That's the only way I could say it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think every NHL coach is like this to a degree. They at least have a little bit of this in them, but there are those coaches out there that seem to, really favor the veterans. They just want to have a trusty, experienced player on the ice in crunch time. And I think I can tell you from when Tortorella was on the Rangers, there were times where that was certainly the case. I got to ask you that one of the big things that you guys did that was kind of in-house this offseason was the big Travis Konecny contract, the 8 years, the $70 million. I mean, is the price fair for both sides? Is it money well spent? How are you both feeling about, locking up your guy for the long term here?
Yeah, I think it was a pretty solid contract. I think, he wanted to stay. The team wanted him to stay. It's going to be interesting down the line as all these 8-year deals are. And that's the thing, is that there's really no difference across the league, in my opinion, about these 8-year deals. Every team is going to kind of pay the price for them in year like 6, 7, 8. And I feel like we're getting Travis Konecny at the peak of his career now. And he's a leader on this team. He's a leader in the locker room. So to make that commitment to him, as opposed to trading him, I think, which had been kind of on the table a little bit over the last year, I think it says that, people who want to be here will reward that. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, they'll get peak Konecny for 4 years. Then there could be some worries that it turns into a Brendan Gallagher kind of contract. And so the timing may not be exactly right for when they really become a perennial all-star team again and where his career is at. That's the tough part of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's interesting how that goes because, people do kind of fixate on the length of certain contracts. But, if you want to get your guy, whether he's in-house, you want to get him to stay, or you're going out into the free agent pool, you're going to have to probably go a little bit longer with a contract than you otherwise would like. And if you do that, that's a way to at least keep the average annual value in check a little bit and have a couple of different moves you can make to stay underneath the salary cap. But yeah, I mean,
the term is always the killer, especially when, you're giving a guy like his second big contract.
Yeah, I'm with you. But, as an opposing fan or whatever you want to call me here, Konecny with the Flyers. I mean, to me, that looks like a good deal for you guys going forward.
Yeah. What do you think the plan is with Kaapo Kakko for the Rangers? Just getting that 1-year deal.
Yeah, that's sort of the $1 million question right now. I've been saying on my show that it does kind of feel like this could be his final season as a member of the Rangers. There's people even speculating that he could be traded before the season starts. I don't really see the point of that because I don't know exactly
that makes no sense.
Yeah, not really. I mean, the only way it would make any sense is if like an Othmann or a Berard, one of these prospects, absolutely just blew everyone's mind in training camp and in the preseason. But even then, I think it makes sense to hang on to Kakko. But when you've got other free agents like Igor and Miller and Lafreniere and a couple others next offseason, it just feels to me like Kakko might be the odd man out. So we'll see how it goes. But, fingers crossed that he finally does reach that potential if his and helps the Rangers for at least this year.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is I think Laviolette at times has gotten good play because Kakko can play defense. The problem with Kakko is, and I fell victim to this when I was scouting him, watching him overseas, he found more open ice. His skating got a little better finally, but he still doesn't find open ice. So really when he's scoring near the net. He's got great hands near the net, but he's got to get near the net, and that seems to be his problem.
I would agree with that. And one other thing about Kakko that's so strange is he does better when he's out there with the non-star players.
Yes.
Like when he's out there with Mika and Kreider, I think he's kind of tentative and wants to defer a little bit. When you put him out there with like Will Cooley and Johnny Brodzinski, all of a sudden he kind of asserts himself a little bit. So kind of just a unique quirk in his game. I can't really put my finger on it other than just being more comfortable asserting himself with the non-star players. So.
Yeah, I have a question for you, John. Sure. I look at Keandre Miller, and I had seen him a lot before the Rangers. The way I kind of see his play now, unless it changes, the Rangers could be in danger of making a Darnell Nurse kind of mistake with that next contract.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. It could kind of go either way. Overall, I do feel like, Keandre Miller, you have to call him a success story with the Rangers thus far. Obviously, a first-round pick. One of 3 first-rounders that year, and the other 2 did not go well at all. So maybe that makes me kind of overrate him a little bit. But overall, Miller's been a solid player. And I do think there will be a situation where he's going to, fit in nicely underneath the salary cap. I don't think he's the kind of player that's going to break the bank. But Ryan Lindgren just re-signed on a 1-year deal. He's another player, and I love Lindgren, but I feel like he might be on his way after this season ends, and that'll open up a little bit more space for Miller.
So talk about that. I mean, I don't think that's the guy you want to save on the cap because of his relationship with Fox. They played together for many years beyond the Rangers, and on the Rangers, they're great. He's a gamer in the playoffs. I know he gets hurt once in a while, but he always comes back. I just think they've walked him to unrestricted free agency, and if they think Miller is a number 2, I think they're going to find out he's not. That, I think, is the potential mistake there.
Yeah, it's interesting. It kind of feels like a situation where they might only be able to keep one or the other. And maybe that decision is still being made. Maybe that's going to play out a little bit this season, coming up here, obviously.
They did that with Buchnevich, though. It doesn't always have to be that way. But don't you feel like it went that way with Buchnevich? Oh, he's a cap casualty. Meanwhile, look how good he is.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was a tough situation with Buchnevich. I didn't like that trade when it happened. It's one of those things where I can at least understand why they did it for the reason you just mentioned, Russ, the cap casualty kind of thing, and them thinking that, somebody would step up and take that role, but nobody really did. And to your point, Buchnevich became a star. Now, Lindgren, I don't think has that high of a ceiling.
No.
Buchnevich did, but, steady, solid player, and you can't measure everything with metrics. That guy's been the heart and soul of this team for quite some time now. So, yeah.
The other thing is you have this Shesterkin contract hanging over your heads. Do you think they'll get it done before the end of next season?
Before the end of next, it's
this upcoming season.
My thing, I talked about this on my show. If you look at it from Igor's perspective, he really has no incentive to sign a deal right now, unless he just wants to get it done and be comfortable and okay, I'm going to be here. But if he wants to play hardball, I mean, he's Igor. He's had an awesome start to his career. He's going to have another great season. And at that point, he'll be able to talk to 32 teams and not just one. And now you've got a bidding war. And that's good news if you're Igor Shesterkin. I personally would love to see him back this upcoming, get a deal done before this upcoming season. Obviously, he's got one more year left on his deal. But, from his perspective, I think he might opt to play it out a little bit. He wants to be the highest paid goalie in the NHL, and I completely understand that.
I mean, what would you give him? I think he would get – I think if the Rangers are smart, like you said, before the season starts, come in at 12.5 by 8 and see what he says.
Yeah, I think they can use that 8th year in their favor because obviously when you sign somebody from another team, you can only go to 7 years. So give them the 8 years. That to me is a no-brainer. Give them the full no-move clause, or at least mostly a full no-move clause for most of that deal to sweeten the pot a little bit. And, I mean, I'm hearing his camp wants $12 million. I would do if that's what it takes, I might have to do that. I'm hoping maybe it's right around 11 million, 11 and a half. But as far as him wanting to be the highest paid goalie in the NHL, I have no problems with that because that's who he's been the last few years here. All right, we just want to take a quick minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Indeed. We are driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate is not to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed data survey. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
So one of the rookies that we'll see on the Flyers side of things in this series is Jet Luchenko, our first-round draft pick, our higher first-round draft pick. Really excited about seeing him in action against kind of his peers, the Rangers rookies here. But how do you think the Rangers draft went, and who of those guys are we going to see in this rookie series?
For this year, I think overall they had a solid draft. You got to remember that they didn't have a second rounder, didn't have a third rounder. They've been, buyers over the last couple of years. So as a result of that, those draft picks tend to wave bye-bye pretty quickly. Emery not listed on the roster. They do have Raul Berard, who is a fourth-round pick. And, overall, once you get into the middle to late rounds, information on these players becomes a little bit more scarce. But overall, somebody that seems to be a well-rounded player and somebody that the Rangers like. And, when you don't have a second-rounder or a third-rounder, I think it does make it that much more important to find somebody important, find somebody that's going to be a contributing member a little bit later in the draft. I think they've done that with Berard, and one of the players for sure that I'm going to be watching when this camp kicks off. I wanted to ask you about one of your players as well, Michkov, obviously, number 7 overall pick back in 2023, just a year ago. Solid season with the KHL this past year, and has been the captain for some of his teams there in Russia. A lot of buzz. What are your thoughts on him? And is he one of the guys that you're definitely looking forward to seeing, in this camp?
Russ, I'll let you take this one.
Sure. Yeah, I've seen him a bit in the KHL. In camp, it'll be different. He's 19 years old. He had to come over here. Most Russians don't come over that young. They're usually somewhere between 21 and 24. So I think he is going to, have some ups and downs. Now, in a rookie game, he should be fine because he's used to playing open style hockey. Anyhow, they don't really get crazy checking. Although I remember the year with Othmann. Othmann was kind of getting physical in that game in Philly. But for the most part, there's going to be some checking. But I think he'll be fine in the rookie series. I think it'll change when he gets to the regular season. But in this rookie series, he should shine. If he doesn't really shine, then I think that will be an indication that, he's got some developing to do, some maturing to do. Wouldn't be a shock. I know you can't expect just because of whatever numbers he had in the KHL to transfer automatically into the NHL. And he's not going to be coached by John Tortorella in these games. So unfortunately, John Tortorella and whoever's going to coach in this game, who is coaching, Rach? Did they say?
I don't know. I don't know that they've said who will be behind the bench, but it's either going to be an assistant coach or a player.
Right.
Coach,
and they may
we'll
do it differently than John. So I think for Michkov, it's just going to kind of be getting his feet wet, but he'll be exciting to watch.
Absolutely. One other player that I got to ask about. Now, he doesn't have the kind of buzz I don't think that Michkov does, but I'm sure you're both well aware from him, is Denver Barkey. And, you just mentioned, Russ, obviously what these guys do in the KHL, or in this case, the OHL, it's not going to always translate perfectly to the NHL. But, man, this kid last year on the OHL champion London Knights, 102 points in 64 games, lit it up in the playoffs as well, right around point per game. Former third rounder. Is this like a steal for you guys? How are you feeling about Barkey here?
I don't think he's a steal. I think he was taken where he should have been taken given his size, right? He's only 5'9". So now he's tremendously skilled. But, you kind of think about Danny Briere a little bit as a smaller skilled forward. And there's like a little bit of a parallel there. But, he has continued to blossom in London. And I think that maybe he's exceeded some expectations there, but London is also a very good team and he has lots of very good line mates. And so kind of seeing him play outside that environment more and more is really important for us to see. He is, still only 19 years old. So a lot of runway here, but I think that, if he can make a pretty big impression this year in the rookie series, he can go back to London, go gangbusters, and then hopefully turn pro next year.
Yeah, the thing I'll add is in dev camp, he was leading. I mean, he was doing better than Luchenko, really better than most. Just leading out on the ice, making plays happen, getting everybody involved on his line. So I do think he could be one of the top guys in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other thing I got to ask about as far as like players in this game, and if you guys have any questions about any of the Ranger prospects, I'd love to hear those too. But the Flyers, when it comes to their goaltender position, kind of been looking for that franchise goalie for a while. And, a couple of names in camp here, they're going to be participating in these games. You've got Carson Bjarnson and Sam Hilbrand. Bjarnson, former second-round pick in 2023. And Hilbrand, it sounds like he was on the U.S. World Juniors team, although he didn't get to play a whole lot in that tournament. Any thoughts on these two? I mean, do they have bright futures with the Flyers going forward here?
So Hilbrand is an amateur tryout for the camp, not officially a Flyers prospect. Flyers goalie prospects right now, there's a little bit of consternation going on. Alexei Kolosov not attending. Looks like he's going to stay in Russia and not come back over. So kind of the main Flyers goalies are going to show up at main camp. So Carson Bjarnson is really the only Flyers prospect goaltender available right now. The other main prospect plays over in Russia as well, so we won't see him until he's ready to come over to North America permanently. But I really like Bjarnson. I think he's had a tough go of it a little bit in junior just because his team hasn't been that great. He plays in Kingston, and they, not a great defense in front of him. But he has played a lot with Team Canada and had some success there. So I think that this is a really good opportunity for him to make an impact and to show what he can do.
Yeah, Bjarnson's got a high end to him, so he really should be fine. He should actually show off a little bit.
All right, we just want to take a quick minute to let everyone know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by our good friends at Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so that you do not have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. You've also got all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees when it comes to checkout. You've also got seat views. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy any of your tickets. You've also got the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. And you want to take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It is game time.
My question for you is I happen to like Maxime Barbashev. I think he will bang some bodies. So will Othmann, obviously. Othmann's going to push around some guys, especially he's been in it for a while. but I think Barbashev can do that. What do you like about his game?
He's somebody that I don't think he was as heralded as of a draft pick as some of the other guys that are going to be participating in this for the Rangers. If I'm not mistaken, I want to say he went in the 5th round. But yeah, this is somebody that obviously, has decent size and somebody that, throughout his career has been able to produce a solid amount of points and somebody that's a well-rounded player. I don't know that you're going to see his name like in any top 5 prospect list for the Rangers or probably even top 10, but somebody that, I think can go out there and obviously make an impact. We'll see how it goes here. But yeah, I mean, that's what's so much fun about these tournaments, because we go into these things and we have, I want to watch this player. I want to watch that player. And somebody's going to steal the show. There's at least going to be 2 or 3 players on each side that maybe you're not really looking at all that closely, but they're going to come in and they're going to bring it. And, they'll see their stock, rise considerably in their respective organization. Somebody like, Matt Rempe, he played in this series, these 2 games a couple of years ago. And even as recently as the middle of this past NHL regular season, nobody was really thinking about Matt Rempe. And then all of a sudden he gets called up. He's getting in all these fights. And honestly, seems to have an inside track to making the opening night roster. He thinks
so. I ran into Rempe a couple weeks ago, interviewed him.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, that's and cool. he seems to think he does. He talked about his off-season training with the fighting training, but he also I spoke to a lot of his teammates in the last year, and they really spoke highly of him. He is a good skater. He's not going to score a lot of goals, but he could score like 10 goals. And if he could do that, play 4th line tough minutes, he's good. I got a couple more guys for you. I mean, I know Dylan Garand's going to be great. I mean, I don't think
they like him.
Say anything. He's terrific. Were you going to say something, Rich?
Yeah, well, just kind of along the lines of Rempe, they also have Edstrom, who is a giant as well. Where does he fit into the picture with Rempe being the big guy?
Yeah, it's interesting because I actually did, I think it was only like 2 or 3 episodes ago, I was talking about Edstrom a little bit and talking about some of the players to watch in these 2 games here and really throughout all of Rangers camp. But Edstrom was one of the guys that I mentioned, and he sort of became like the forgotten man last year because he actually was called up to the Rangers a little bit before Rempe was. And then the 2 of them were playing on the same line on the 4th line with Barclay Goodrow. So you talk about like a big, physical, tough line.
It was the biggest line in the league.
Yeah, right. And so yeah, I mean, Edstrom, overall he came up, scored a goal or 2. I think he scored in his 1st or 2nd game, if I'm not mistaken, with the Rangers. And somebody that kind of is, he was almost the one that started this trend of the Rangers late in drafts just finding giants to draft. And I don't dislike that strategy at all, because by the time you get to like the 6th round, the 7th round, I mean, look, they have scouts and everything, and I'm sure there's players that they like, but it really does become kind of a dart throw at that point. Well, size and strength, that stuff doesn't slump. So it makes sense. And, I was talking about on my show, another guy that's in camp here is Dylan Roobroeck, who's a center, and he's also 6'7". So at one time or another, I don't think it'll happen this year, but you could have a 4th line of Roobroeck starring Edstrom and Rempe. They're all 6'7", well over 200 pounds. I mean, my God, better keep your head up when those 3 are on the ice together.
Yeah, I don't know if that'll all exactly happen, but it would be fun if it did.
It would.
I think 2 guys that actually have to have big games are Adam Sikora and Matthew Robertson, especially Robertson, because there's a spot for him if somebody gets hurt, if somebody, Zach Jones, maybe doesn't do well. Robertson's next up. I think he has to have a big game.
I said the same thing. I feel like of everybody in this camp for the Rangers, the one that probably is under the most pressure to perform well, the whole camp, but specifically these 2 games when you're, up against some actual opponents, is Matthew Robertson for basically the reasons you just said. He's 23 years old. So look, I mean, he's still getting going. He could still turn out to be a solid NHL player, but he's kind of an enigma right now because, the Rangers over these last couple of years, a player gets hurt or whatever happens, and there's never even any chat or any discussion of calling him up. And by all accounts, people that go to a lot of Wolfpack games, they've told me that he's sort of just there. He's okay. He's not killing the Wolfpack every time he's out there, but there's nothing that's jumping off the screen in a positive way. So for me, Robertson.
Sometimes when guys come up and they have to get to that next level and they have a partner who could really bring them along, he does have some intangibles that they would like, being the physical nature of his game. And actually, he's a pretty good skater. And I think he could do something more than what he's doing in Hartford. Hartford could be a disaster at times,
Yeah, there's time where they definitely get a little leaky when it comes to their defense. And, he, to your point, big physical, tough player. I'm not giving up on him yet. That's for sure.
No,
But he more so than anybody, man. He's gotta perform well in these 2 games and kind of reestablish who he is. I think Zach Jones, to your point, will get the first crack at it. Ruedel, he's there, but he's your prototypical number 7 defenseman at this point. So I think if Jones falters or if there's an injury, maybe Robertson's the guy that gets the call, and there's a little bit of a sink or swim kind of a situation.
Yeah, and I would say on the Flyers side of things, the 2 guys that really need to make the biggest impression are Elliot Denoye and Samu Tuomala, for slightly different reasons. Elliot Denoye kind of took a step back this past season, only had 22 points in 63 games with Lehigh Valley, and that's just not good enough. He had so much more potential than that. And as kind of now one of the elder statesmen of the rookie camp, he has to take a leadership role and he has to make a huge impression and be a playmaker, get scoring opportunities. And Samu Tuomala had been struggling for a while, but really kind of got back on the horse a little bit this past year and got a little better as the season progressed. And so he just has to show that wasn't a fluke, that he can continue that into this season and really show that, maybe he's up for a call up, maybe mid-late season for the Flyers if he can get to that point. And it's got to start early and often at these rookie games.
Yeah, I think he has to really almost score in this game and kind of show, okay, yeah, don't count me out yet. I just, I hit the wall. It happens. I think that's a big thing. We obviously, Hunter McDonald gets tremendously hyped here. So unfortunately, he's going to have to live up to Keith Jones's expectations by plastering a few guys and maybe shutting down, the Rangers offense when he's out there, because I think that's what they're expecting. And there's a lot of hype with Carter Sutherland. I like him. Believe me, I like him. But that's another guy, he played the World Juniors. He's putting up some points. Things are going on a pretty good trajectory, but boy, some prospect guys are hyping him to I think a little too high. So this game's probably important for him too.
Yeah, and that's where I think Spencer Gill kind of has a get out of jail free card here, because I think the eyes are going to be on other defensemen. So we've got Emile Andre, Oliver Bonk, the aforementioned McDonald and Carter Sutherland, Spencer Gill, who was just drafted. No pressure to try and battle for a spot. He just has to play a solid game. And I think that'll be a really interesting guy to keep an eye on as well.
Absolutely. You mentioned Bonk. I figure I'll ask you about one more prospect here, and then I know we want to talk about some roster battles for both these teams. But yeah, Oliver Bonk, he was somebody that kind of jumped out to me, obviously former first-round pick. I haven't watched like a ton of him, obviously, but the thing that stood out to me, this is a defenseman, and again, not all these points are going to translate to the NHL, but he's in the OHL this past year, 67 points in 60 games for a defenseman. So that's pretty eye-opening at any level of hockey. So just your thoughts on Bonk. You touched on him briefly there, but just your overall thoughts on Bonk.
Yeah, I could add that I spoke to him mid-season, and he's really confident. He changed his skates. He went with a different skate company. That's pretty funny. It's a company called Morris Blade, and he really is almost like a spokesman for him now. I mean, he really took to it. And so he's kind of like that guy. He's very confident. He's smooth. He's scoring probably more in the OHL than he's going in the NHL. But the defense is there. The hockey IQ is there. The speed's there. So in a game like this, he's a dangerous guy. They're going to have to, the Rangers can't really play fast and loose when he's out there, because he could really hurt them.
All right. And I know we want to talk about roster battles. We've got that on the agenda here. So, going into the season, Flyers, training camp and whatnot in the preseason, which guys are trying to make the team, who's battling who, and how do you see anything that kind of stands out for you there?
Nobody. That's the thing that stands out about this season for the Flyers, is that, again, limited roster spots. With Michkov coming over, he's going to make the team. There just really isn't a question here, because he wouldn't have come over otherwise. And everybody else is just kind of battling for first call-up opportunities here. So that's what's the interesting part of the Flyers this year, is that there really aren't any roster battles.
Yeah,
And what about with the Rangers? You did talk about Rempe. We talked briefly about Robertson. Where else do you think there's competition?
Yeah, I mean, I think the top 9 is pretty well set. Those guys are going to be in the roster in one way or another. When it comes to the forwards, it's just a matter of who plays with who and who's on what power play unit and who's killing penalties and all that stuff. One thing that really stands out for me, though, and both these guys are obviously going to be on the roster at this point, but Braden Schneider versus Jacob Trouba for the right to play in the top 4 and specifically alongside K'Andre Miller, because we saw this past season Trouba very up and down, had the injury that he was dealing with, and K'Andre Miller played better with Braden Schneider than he did with Jacob Trouba. Now, at times in the past, certainly when Miller was making his NHL debut, those two have been a great pairing together, but you're now looking at a situation where, K'Andre Miller clearly had a better game when he was out there with Braden Schneider. Trouba's obviously got seniority. He's the team captain. For a while, I was thinking they'd probably give Trouba the benefit of the doubt and start him in the top 4. But the more I think about it, they don't really play favorites like that. It really comes down to, okay, which player, take away the contracts, take away, how many years they've been in the league and all that stuff. Who's better right here and right now? And to me, that's Braden Schneider. They don't call him Baby Trouba for nothing. He's got a lot of Trouba's game to his game as well. And very clearly, I think this past season outperformed Jacob Trouba. So that's one that I'm going to be keeping an eye on. Obviously, that's not part of the rookie camp, but when the real training camp begins in the preseason, he might be the guy there. We'll see. Yeah,
I like that because, I've interviewed both guys, have seen them both play a lot. Trouba's a prideful guy. He's not going to just let Schneider take his job. So I think he knows what's at stake here. I think he'll loom large. I think he'll come in and surprise people again. That's just my feeling. But when you look at the bottom 6, I mean, Will Culley's kind of stretching it, having him on the third line, and they're a little weak on 4C. I would think those are some areas that maybe are potential battles.
Yeah, I think for sure when it comes to 4C, you're looking at Sam Carrick right now, who technically is the Rangers' biggest free agent pickup because they traded for Riley Smith. So technically Sam Carrick is the biggest UFA pickup. So not necessarily ideal. I'm certainly willing to give him a chance. By all accounts, he's a physical player. He's a big guy. He kills penalties. We'll see how it goes. But, every year, whether it's the Flyers, the Rangers, anybody else, you look at the opening night roster and you can pick out a couple players where by the end of the year, this guy might get squeezed out a little bit. And honestly, I'd probably prefer Johnny Brodzinski. I mean, I should probably give Carrick a chance and see him in action with the Rangers. I'd probably prefer Johnny Brodzinski in that spot, though. Brodzinski's got some speed, some offense to his game. I'd go with Johnny B, but it's not up to me. We'll see what the Rangers do there.
I'm with you on that just from the effort. I mean, we've seen his brother play a lot, but Johnny has a lot of effort in games, and that effort is what you want on the fourth line. It just is.
Very easy to root for, too, because he's been with a million different teams and, call it up, sent down, call it up, sent down. Finally became an NHL regular last year at the age of 30. And, you mentioned Cooley. I'm good with Cooley. He was a very physical player for the Rangers this past year. And, not a ton of flash, I guess, but also as a rookie, somebody that just didn't make any mistakes. There was never a time where...
No, he's a good, safe player.
Yeah,
I think I like him better on the fourth than the third. I don't know what your feeling is.
Yeah, I mean, the way things set up now, I'm cool with him on the third, and they moved him back and forth a little bit last season for sure. But yeah, I mean, the way it is right now, I mean, I guess you could put VZ on the third and put Cooley on the fourth, but I think Cooley's got the more upside there, and I would go with Will Cooley on the third line. Curious to see how he does.
It'll be interesting. Even though Brett Berard's a smaller guy, he's really like a fourth liner of the future who could be a real good one too.
Love Brett Berard. He's been a favorite of mine for some time. He's produced everywhere he's gone. I got to watch him very closely in the World Juniors a couple of times, and I think the guy's a player. He is undersized, but you wouldn't know it from the way that he plays. So definitely looking forward to seeing what he can do as well.
Yeah. The other thing with the Flyers, there's not a battle, but Fedotov.
Anything at goalie? That's
what I was going to get at. There's no battle, but Fedotov is going to have to play a fair amount of games here because Sam Erson's got a limit or a cap on how many games he could play. This is only his, second real season of playing games, and he kind of hit a wall. So, can Fedotov play 25 games? I don't know. We're going to see.
Yeah, absolutely. How about anybody that was on the team and, you could see maybe taking a big leap forward this upcoming season? You know, everybody's got those players. You're looking for a little bit more every season. Is there anybody that kind of jumps out for you, either one of you, as far as like, oh man, this dude, he's going to bring it this year and he's going to go to a whole new level?
I mean, Tyson Forster, I think, can continue on his trajectory. I think last year was his first full season at the NHL level, and he did really well. And I think this is going to be a big test for him. And, you know, is he a guy that's going to be a top 6 mainstay for this team? It is a question, I think.
Yeah, I'll make a prediction here. I think Forster is going to have more goals than Owen Tippett this year. I think because Forster, if he figures it out on the power play, like his feet are a little off. If he figures it out on the power play with that shot, he's able to get better shots off on the power play than Tippett. For whatever reason, it shouldn't be that way, but that's the way it's been lately.
Yeah, that makes sense. One more question, I think, and you know, we've been talking for a while here. It doesn't feel like it. It feels like we just started.
It does.
But you know, John Tortorella, obviously, very polarizing coach, really throughout his whole career. He's coached both teams. Still full faith in him that he's the guy and he can bring this team to the next level, the promised land, call it whatever you want to call it. Are you guys both all in with Torts, or how do you feel about him?
I mean, I think he's the coach for now. I think it'll depend on how some of these players develop and, you know, the decisions that management makes in terms of who they're prioritizing, who they're giving opportunities to, who they're signing to these longer term deals. I think that as long as the team is progressing in a forward direction, and as long as Tortorella wants to coach, he'll be the coach. But there's definitely a possibility that he'll want to walk away, or the Flyers will decide, you know, we've reached an end point here. I think that the Flyers have more years to go to be cup contenders than Torts maybe has in him, is really where I think we're at.
Well, definitely in his contract. Like we know how much is left in his contract. I think what Rachel said is true. And I think what could speed that process up is if there's a little bit of a slip in the team, just compared to last year. Like last year, point wise, everybody gets better. The Devils are much better. The division's much harder. The Islanders maybe have a problem if Sorokin can't play a lot, but they still have Varlamov. So there's only so many points to go around. And if all of a sudden the Flyers aren't as fortunate as last year and there's a bit more struggles, then the fans are going to be calling for younger players in there and not the Nick Deloriers and not the Eric Johnsons and guys like that. And that's where Torts may, you know, see the end of the tunnel there. And that's what I think Rachel's getting at is they may hit the, you know, heavier on the young players later in that season than, or maybe even earlier than John wants if things aren't going like last season. So that could be the issue.
Well,
Gotcha. Should we call it there? Do we do a prediction for these two rookie games? I mean, I'm thinking probably a split. It feels evenly matched.
Yeah, I think it's split. I can't see.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's sweeping.
Yeah.
It depends how the goalies go. I mean, it's like if it's Garand against Bjarnson, then I think there's a team has a chance to win both. But you know, if they split, if they're not playing against each other, it's a split. That's the way I'm going to put it. I think the goalies are going to be the X factor.
That's pretty spot on. I think if they play in opposite games, then those two teams they'll win their games. Is how it'll go. All right, so a big thanks to Rachel and Russ for teaming up for this very special crossover edition of Locked On New York Rangers and Locked On Philadelphia Flyers. Can't wait to see these rookies in action and just see how everybody does on both sides, but obviously especially the Rangers. So again, huge thanks to you guys as always for tuning into the Locked On New York Ranger podcast, your team every day. And a couple of quick announcements here before we call it. Firstly, the fantasy hockey reminder. If you played last year and you want to save your spot this year, you have until Friday to do so. Otherwise, at that time, we're going to open the door to some potential new players for this upcoming season. So definitely looking forward to that and getting the draft underway, the league underway, getting everything set up and getting ready to roll. I know that some people want block shots added as one of the stats this year. I think we can make that happen. But as of right now, I'm looking at Sunday, September 29th, around about 8:45 p.m. That will very likely be the draft date. That's the Sunday before the NHL season begins. So obviously looking forward to that. And playoff overtime stories, we want to hear them here on Locked On New York Rangers. The Rangers this past year in the playoffs won 4 different games in overtime. So go ahead, share your stories with me. We're going to read them on a future episode of Locked On New York Rangers, probably right before the season starts. Go ahead and send them my way. Where you were, who you were with, what you were doing, how you reacted when the Rangers won any of their 4 overtime victories from this past playoff run in this past season. It's going to be a lot of fun. We've done episodes like this in the past, always a good time, and that'll be a good way to get everybody geared up for opening night as well. But that will do it for today, guys. Once again, if you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that is @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.